This is so funny. Look at this thing. I'm gonna use this as my thumbnail, I think. All right. Let's get into this here. Decided to do an impromptu stream. I was on Twitter, and I saw that there was a bit of an interaction between Ryan, my buddy Ryan Beard. Unironic buddy. I actually like Ryan a lot. He's a genuine guy. You know, you gotta give him that much. I'm not even kidding. And I saw that they were having a back and forth on there. So I'm like, the omni-liberal. I didn't even really know that was Destiny. The omni-liberal, you know, probably because it's not the word's Destiny. A little confusing. Anyway, they had a back and forth. So I was thinking about tomorrow coming on and covering it. And then I saw this picture randomly on my feed where it goes, LOL true. Well, I actually saw, this is what I saw. If I'm being honest, I definitely lost the debate. I just have a Destiny. I didn't do a very good job of standing up for non-binary people, etc. And I'm pretty sad about it. Anyway, I don't expect any sort of sympathy because I brought it on myself. I'll take the L and move on. Respectable response. This, though, has me rolling. This is incredible. This is an incredible one. I wonder what some of this thread says. Anyway, let's watch the debate. Let's listen to the debate. Let's get this sussy baka going. Trust me, it's playing.
Oh, nothing much.
I think Destiny's audio is a little cut in the beginning, but it'll be okay.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so I just decided to come on and talk things out with you.
The music is really hyping this conversation up, huh?
I guess I've just been very confused because, like, I felt like in our conversation when we talked about, like, why it wasn't good to use Cracker, like,
Ryan! Come on, bro. I'm streaming on Twitch, dude. Bro, listen. I understand that you're white, and so you have the pass, but you have to say it with an A, bro. You can't throw out the hard R on me like that, dog. That's insane. You can't do that to me, dog. You got to be more respectful of my of my heritage.
I was connecting with a lot of the points you were making. I was like, okay, it makes sense that, like, if I want to be morally consistent, then I should, you know, I still don't think Cracker is as bad as the N-word, but I was like, you kind of won me.
To be fair, no one said that, ever. That's never an argument that any serious person...
Yeah, nobody ever really said that. I think Ryan brought that up in the debate, because I watched that debate too. You know, not for nothing, but I mean, I view farm Ryan Beard. I love Ryan to death. But, you know, if he makes a video or something, or if he has a conversation, I tend to watch it. So I know I'm pretty educated on the Ryan Beard conversational content, you know, category. I'm pretty sure Destiny made that abundantly clear. That, like, no, there are people who probably are saying that, but they're not taken seriously. You know, it's like the general argument was never like it's as bad. It was more just like, hey, it's understandable why Twitch wants to crack down on it. That was the whole argument, pretty much. So.
And I've never made that argument, so I don't know why you're
saying
that.
Okay. No, I know that you never made that argument. I'm just saying, I'm saying that you won me over with what you were saying. But then I guess I've just been confused with why you've been doubling down on, like, calling people subhuman, or, like, calling the entire trans community inbred fucking losers, or, like, insisting on
Did he actually say that? I mean, like, if you call individuals subhuman, I mean, I don't really care. You know, if you call them if you say that they're subhuman because of their identity, that's obviously a problem. But did Destiny actually say that, like, trans people are subhuman or whatever?
To say the N-word, trans community, inbred fucking losers, or like insisting on continuing to say the N-word.
Did he actually?
Okay, so there's like three different huge things that we could walk through if you want. So,
all right,
what's the first one we got?
I guess calling people subhuman.
So, should you just not? Is that just why is this like a banned insult?
I mean, I don't think it's a good. Yeah, I don't think it's like a good insult.
Hold on, wait, hold on. I want Mr. Beard Twitter energy here. So you think that insult is transphobic?
I want Mr. Beard Twitter energy, bro. He's damn. I guess Destiny's Twitch ban is like really getting him a little heated because like he didn't even give Ryan like a chance to breathe. He's like, hey, you were being incredibly, you know, I guess you'd say antagonistic on Twitter. Bring that energy here, brother. All right, I'm here for it.
Why?
I think that insult, I think that is not an insult that you should use for any person.
Okay, no, but you made it specific that you thought this insult specifically was transphobic. Why?
No, I think that this specific insult has been used against trans people historically. That's what I said.
Yeah, but like...
I mean, I feel like that's been used against a lot of different people. I feel like... I don't know. Listen, I don't know specifically what's going on, but apparently Ryan Beard called it transphobic. And it's not like a specific word. It's just something that's used to usually diminish people. So like if anything, it would be bigoted, I guess. But I mean, I don't really see it. I don't know, man. You might have jumped the gun on that, Ryan.
There's tons of insults that have been used against tons of people, right? Subhuman is not like a specific insult for trans people.
I never said it was a specific insult for trans people, but the reason why we don't use slurs is because calling someone a slur is insinuating that you think that they're subhuman. That's why it's not good to call someone a slur, because the origin of calling someone the N-word or calling someone the F-slur is that it stems from thinking people are subhuman, which is why I view calling someone subhuman on pretty much the same level as calling someone a slur, because that's where slurs stem from.
I don't think anybody in their right mind believes that at all. I just genuinely, like, yeah, of course, any slur to put somebody down is trying to say, I guess they're saying they're subhuman, they're saying that they're less than. Sure, but I don't think anybody makes that direct correlation. I feel like we're heavily word policing. I understand getting rid of slurs, but like we're talking about, hey, you're a subhuman. Like it's mean. It's a mean word, but to say that that's somehow like blanket racist or bigoted, I think that's a stretch. I feel like that would be on the same page as if I called somebody stupid and they're like, "Oh my god, that's ableist," because you know people with intellectual disabilities are considered stupid. But I'm not being ableist. Now, if I use the R slur, yeah, I think that would be ableist. And by the way, quick plug, I do think that we genuinely need to make steps to not use that slur. Destiny included. I think that there is a general underrepresentation of people, especially with intellectual disabilities. But people with disabilities, nobody really cares about saying the pro gamer R word. So if we're gonna set a standard against cracker with an R, we should probably set a standard against the R slur.
Okay, if that is the position that you want to take, that's fine. But you must realize that you are almost completely alone in that position, and almost every group of people on the internet violates this mandate that you've made.
True.
Tons of people will say things like, "Oh, this is inhuman," or "You're less than human," or "You're so." There's a lot of people that use insults like this.
Well, I don't approve of any of that. And when you tweeted that Keffels had called someone subhuman, I thought that was fucking stupid too.
Are you out there calling her cisphobic, or? Because when you pointed out what I was saying, you made it sound as though I was specifically insulting the trans community, when subhuman is not a trans-specific insult at all. And when I called tons of people subhuman, I don't just call trans people subhuman.
I understand that you call tons of people subhuman, but in my opinion, calling someone subhuman is the same as calling them a slur. And I don't understand why you would go so hard against calling someone a cracker, but then be totally fine with calling someone subhuman, when I feel like those are pretty much the same thing.
Because when you
first of all, I think that subhuman is probably worse than the C word. I'm on Twitch, so I can't. I think that it's probably generally meaner, I guess. But cracker is specifically trying to target out white people, because we're a big marginalized group. And in the summer we're marginalized because I get sunburned bad. But subhuman is just a general term.
Call somebody a cracker, you're basically saying you're a bad person because of your skin color. It's probably not.
Don't call people poopy heads, okay? Because poopy head is just a way to diminish people. It's to say that they're basically poop in their head. And back in the day, racists, even racists today, think that people of color in all marginalized groups, they have poo brain. So you can't say poopy head. You see, this is the line of logic that we're operating with.
A characteristic that we should generally be attacking on people. When you call somebody subhuman, I don't know, there might be subhuman for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, maybe they're just cold. Get a sub-zero? I don't know.
You're not actually thinking that...
they're actually subhuman? No, same thing when I call people inbred. I don't think they're actually inside bred or inbred with siblings.
Well, but why would you be okay with insulting someone for
insult? Because I don't know, you make fun of you insult someone. Sometimes it's just because you're an asshole. I don't know, sometimes you think somebody said something dumb. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to insult somebody. I don't know.
Yeah, I think calling someone stupid is a fine insult, but I don't
Why? Stupid is arguably worse. What do you mean? I mean, like intelligence can correlate with class, which can have a lot to do with your life position. It's a little bit ableist. I feel like I can make all the same arguments against stupid that you could for subhuman.
Okay, but then it feels like all the arguments you're making now completely contradict the arguments you made for why we shouldn't use cracker. It's
hold on.
You specifically think that skin color is something that should never be insulted, but intelligence or calling people subhuman is totally fine. I don't understand.
I think that okay, let's just keep
understand your argument.
Okay, hold on. First of all, I never said that skin color is something you shouldn't ever make fun of. You probably shouldn't, okay? But I don't have any hard lines like that. But I'm saying, if you are, be aware of what you're doing. You're just being kind of racist, right? When you insult somebody's skin color. Insulting somebody's skin color is not the same as insulting somebody's intelligence or something like that, or a position that somebody has, right? These are markedly different things. We can say that all of them are bad or you shouldn't do it, but they're still very different.
Yeah, well, when I call someone stupid, it's because I'm insulting their opinions and their positions. Calling someone subhuman is implying that you think that they're a lower class of human. It's just
Yeah, this is what we do when we insult people. That's the whole point of it. Like when you call somebody like, oh, like you're filth, or like, oh, like you're a cretin, or oh, like that's the whole point of these things.
That's true.
I just don't think that calling. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not gonna ever think that calling someone subhuman is a good insult because of the history of that. Considering people subhuman is what leads to fucking genocides and shit.
I don't think it's.
I don't know, bro. This is a heavy stretch, Ryan. I do honestly and genuinely, and I do love you, brother. I genuinely question like your motives here. I genuinely question if you actually believe what you're saying right now. Because it's just such a reach to be like, you know, like obviously, yeah, of course, people have thought that other groups of people are subhuman, but you know, I don't think that you can draw this like hardline comparison to like people saying subhuman in that context.
Calling people subhuman is what leads to genocides. I think there are more important conditions than what people say to each other on Twitter. But listen, if you want to have the position that you shouldn't use subhuman as an insult, that's fine. That's an okay position to have. But you can't say that somebody called somebody subhuman, therefore they're transphobic. That's a huge jump. Nobody's calling anybody subhuman because they're trans. This just happens to be the insult that somebody uses.
It wasn't that it's necessarily.
I mean, if anything, it might honestly be like a little bit bigoted to I don't know, like why. I don't know. It might be a little bit sussy to say that you can't use like general vague insults against a group of people because those people are too sensitive or something. I don't know, dude. It sounds like kind of a little bit of like preachy overprotectiveness. It feels a little bit of like a virtue signal. I'm not trying to be mean, but
a specifically transphobic insult. I just found it confusing why you were saying that we shouldn't dehumanize trans people, but then you are calling them subhuman, and literally the definition.
Well, there's a difference between dehumanizing trans people versus dehumanizing a person that happens to be trans. Those are two very, very different things. In one case, you're dehumanizing somebody for their identity. In the other case, you're just dehumanizing them, and they happen to be an identity. That's it.
Of calling someone subhuman is dehumanizing them. Like,
no,
you agree?
Okay. Hold on, wait.
You agree that if you call someone.
Yes, I did see the Will Smith thing. I will say it's interesting that you're a first-time viewer, which means you probably are a YouTube person. You came from my YouTube, and like I put it up on YouTube. You can check it out on YouTube, brother. But yeah, I saw the Chris Rock and Will Smith thing.
Subhuman, that is dehumanizing them, right?
Okay, let me just. I swear to God, this isn't like. I'm just asking. How old are you? I forget.
I'm 24.
Okay.
Oh my God.
When I say you should.
Why does that matter?
Just because this.
Listen, man. Hot take. I was dumb as fuck when I was 24. It does matter, man. You are significantly less mature when you're like 24 than you are when you're going to be like older. It's a real factor. Like I wouldn't heavily lean into it as a defense for Destiny, but it is something to bring up for context, you know? It is. I know people don't like it, but the people who don't like it are usually young people, and I used to be there too. I was like, don't talk about my age. It doesn't matter. It does, bro. It does, brother. I love you to death, brother. It does. It can definitely matter.
The engagement with this topic is very, very naive. Okay, but I'm just vocabulary speaking. Like when I say that you shouldn't attack black people, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't attack every individual black person. That means that you shouldn't attack like
I think
black. That means you shouldn't attack black people as like a class. So when I say like you shouldn't dehumanize trans people, what I mean is you shouldn't be saying like, oh, like all trans people are X. You shouldn't attack the entire group.
They're all yucky,
right? There's a difference between saying that like you shouldn't attack X class of people versus saying every single person in that class is unassailable. Those are two wildly different things. I guess they sound similar because they use different words, but these are totally different things.
True.
Well, for one thing, you called the entire trans community inbred, so you did.
That's not what I
community.
said. What I said was that the online activist trans community is fucking like inbred insane.
You said the trans community is inbred fucking losers. I mean, maybe you meant the online.
No, if anybody that's
community?
listed, hold on. Let's ask you. What do you think? Do you think I meant the entire trans community, or do you think that I meant the specifically activist trans community that I'm fighting with all the time on Twitter? What do you think I meant?
I will say that if he did make the general like the general prescription. Let me go look it up because I will say one thing. Even if let's say I don't know exactly what he said. I'm gonna go look. Let's say that Destiny. Let's say that Destiny said the trans community. He might have been referring to everybody. It's just specifically like the online activist community, but that's not everybody's responsibility to educate themselves on the hyper specifics of what he's saying. I wonder if it's even here anymore. Did he delete it or what's going on there? I wonder.
I mean, it's what you said.
No, hold on. Use your brain. Think about it. What do you really think I meant there? Do you think I actually just hate trans people and I think all trans people are horrible inbred people? I've got a community of trans people. I've got a record of talking about. You really think that's what I meant?
No, probably not.
Okay, so you are the
but-
cancer that's contributing to people thinking stuff like this. You're not using your brain, right? I obviously am talking about, one, because I think I specifically said it even in the message. I was specifically talking about the trans community online, which is cancerous and inbred and horrible. But that's way different than saying I think all trans people are bad. That's clearly not what I'm saying.
I can't
You're
find
not
these,
understanding how slurs
also
work, because if you call someone a slur, you might be like, oh, I'm just calling you the N-word because I think you specifically are stupid. But if you call someone the N-word, that has the whole history of the N-word and the fact that
yeah, but the N-word is a targeted slur for black people. If I was calling somebody like a tranny, then you have a good argument. Because wait, why the fuck are you...
Oh, bro, are we gonna be a pro gamer here, Destiny? Is this gonna be pro gamer stream? Holy fuck, bro. God damn it. All right. Well, I guess he's feeling pretty bold now that he's not off at Twitch, or that he is off at Twitch. Holy
and then if I'm like, oh, I just meant like this one trans person I don't like.
Oh.
Then it's like, wait, hold on. Now you're using a slur targeted towards trans people. Now this looks way different, right? That's a totally different thing.
Well, I think I come from a perspective where tranny and subhuman mean pretty much the same thing.
Wow, I'm surprised. I'm surprised Ryan said the T slur. To be absolutely honest, listen, bro. Me personally, if somebody uses like a pejorative, right? I know words. If somebody uses like some kind of like a racist slur within context like that, okay, like I'm not gonna get offended by it. But personally, I don't think that you should use it even in like you could just say the T slur. I think it's fine. What it is, I'm just surprised that Ryan didn't censor that language. It's a little bit jarring. I'm not surprised Destiny didn't. I'm a little surprised that Ryan didn't actually like censor his language there. Interesting stuff. Yeah, I guess like using the N-word in the song, more like using the N-word with like an A within quotation marks, like to quote like somebody saying it. Like, oh, that guy called me a sussy baka. You know what I'm saying? Like that is what I'm referring to more than anything else.
Do you really believe that?
No, I genuinely do, yeah.
Hold on, let me just remind us.
And subhuman mean pretty much the same. Well, I think I come from a perspective where tranny and subhuman mean pretty much the same thing.
T slurs against trans people.
Do you really believe that?
No, I genuinely do, yeah.
Oh.
Because why would you call someone a tranny unless you're thinking that they're like
when you use that insult against a trans person, the connotation is that you hate trans people. Like you're using a slur that is designed to target trans people.
I think calling someone subhuman means that you think you're above that person.
Yeah, no shit I do. I think I'm above the fucking morons that I debate online. But not because they're trans. Subhuman doesn't have that meaning. Subhuman was created to insult trans people.
That's true. I get that.
It's a word it means that you think that you're like above that person.
Yeah, no shit. Do you not think I think I'm above people that I argue with sometimes? Yeah, no shit.
I don't think that a slur suddenly becomes like better or worse just because it was designed to target a specific community. That doesn't make sense.
I think that this is a really bad conversation that I am flabbergasted. Honestly, I'm flabbergasted that Ryan Beard just said that like targeted slurs are somehow different. Like they're just like not worse than like regular meanie names. I'm not kidding. I am fucking baffled, to be absolutely honest with you, because I know Ryan watches my stuff, and I love you, Ryan. To me, this is coming off that you dislike Destiny so much that you're willing to kind of sacrifice your moral foundation just in order to contest what he's saying. This comes off as like it comes off as diminishing to marginalized groups to make this assertion that like the N-word, effectively what you're saying as well, is equally as bad as the term subhuman used generally. Like, if I think that somebody's a dumb person and I call you a subhuman fucking idiot, it's mean, but I'm not doing it because of your identity. I'm doing it because like I think you're stupid. So like, okay, that you can say that that's mean because you think somebody's stupid. That's fine, but that is completely different than just generalizing and say like, hey, like let's just say like we'll say like the T slur, right? It's a slur against trans people. Let's say like, that means like subhuman trans people. When I call somebody that, I'm just saying that all trans people are subhuman on the classification or just on the grounds that they are trans. If I call you a subhuman, because it's not because of that, it could be open to interpretation. But if I'm saying it on the grounds that you're really fucking stupid, then like that's different. I don't think it's the same to say that someone's stupid versus say that somebody is like basically a dirty marginalized individual. Totally different. I'm really surprised that Ryan took this perspective because it just feels really wrong. And if I didn't know who he was coming into this debate, I would absolutely start thinking that Ryan didn't give a singular fuck about any marginalized group based off of what he just said. Because that just shows like a profound lack of understanding and sentence. Like that just shows a profound lack of understanding. And that is incredible. That's hot. It's insane.
To me at all.
What is it? Okay, what's the difference between just like a slur and an insult to you then? Like, what about like if I call somebody like cretin or filth? Like, what is that? Are those slurs to you or?
Bro, I would never use those words. Those are weird words.
Slur
not because they're bad. Just like cretin or filth. Like I would just never think to call somebody a cretin. That's so weird. Okay.
Something that is like attacking someone for
very flavorful,
like who they are rather than their opinions. That's generally what I would consider that.
So when you call somebody a dumb fuck or an idiot, what are you attacking there?
Their opinions.
Really? You are a dumb fuck is just attacking somebody's opinions?
You're calling somebody dumb.
Well, generally, yeah.
It's literally a noun. You are a dumb fuck. Not your opinions are dumb or like I can't tell if you really think this or not.
No, I do genuinely think this. I do genuinely think that you shouldn't call people subhuman.
No, I understand that, but I don't know what the difference is for you between like an insult and a slur. Because it sounds like what you're basically advocating for is you just should never insult people.
Hi. Hey, you should not insult people. It's very meany. That's a fine position to have. I just feel like insulting people generally is definitely not as bad as using like a fucking targeted slur at them. That's crazy, brother.
No, I think that you should insult people for their opinions and perspectives.
I do insult people for their opinions and perspectives. One of the words I do that with is subhuman.
Yeah, but the word subhuman stems from, like, thinking that you are, like, genetically superior to people. Not that you think that you're above someone because your opinions are better. The word subhuman comes from thinking that, like, your race is superior to someone else's race.
So my race of European whatever is superior to the race of trans people, or what?
No, I'm saying...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
Anytime
the trans race.
We're not talking about any time throughout history. I can call any person a subhuman. It's a generic insult. If I were to call another person like a tranny as an insult, it doesn't make any sense. It's an insult targeted towards trans people. Why would I call a normal person? And if I use an insult like that, it's pretty indicative that
you like that? He said, why would I call a normal person trans? Very base take, Destiny. Thank you so much. Jesus Christ.
Don't like trans people. Like if I heard somebody call somebody a subhuman, it's like, okay, well they're saying a bit mean insult towards them. If I hear somebody use tranny towards somebody, oh, this person sounds like they're transphobic. That's what I would assume.
Okay, sure. That's the perspective that you can have.
No, that's the perspective that you would have as well. Because if you heard, oh wow, somebody called somebody subhuman, you've got to ask who they're even talking to figure out how you feel about it, right? Because what if I was just talking to like a black person? Do you think that now that's a racist word instead of a transphobic word?
If you go up to a black person and call them subhuman, then yeah, that would have racist connotations to it.
Well, that's totally different. So if I walked up to a black person, I called them subhuman, you can make the reasonable assumption that I'm being racist because I'm walking up to a black person. I'm physically just deciding to walk up to a black guy and go, you're subhuman. That's not what the interaction is here. The interaction is like, hey, I'm talking to somebody online. I think that they're dumb, so I call them subhuman. There's tons of pretext there. It's not comparable.
Do it.
So it's like a multifaceted slur that takes on different definitions depending on who you say it to?
Different words have different contexts depending on what you say them in.
So if I call like a black person like an idiot or like a dipshit, given like the race like divides of education in the United States, is that like kind of a racial slur too, or?
I mean, I think there's an interesting discussion to be had about like how insults are based on ableism in a lot of ways. I think it's a complicated discussion that there's no like easy conclusion to come to.
Okay, why don't you just lead with that on Twitter then? Say, hey, I don't think any insults are good. Instead of sounding like you have a same position that most people agree. Because right now we are talking something. This is some weird niche shit that literally nobody else would agree with, or like very few people. You're like in a very unique area here. That when you think that like stupid can be like a racist slur.
Sorry, Slash.
No, I don't think that stupid can be a racist slur. I think it's specifically the history behind the word subhuman. Stupid generally is you call someone stupid if you don't like their opinions. Generally, you call someone subhuman historically if you think that you're like racially superior or you think that they're like, you know, a fucking abomination because they're transgender or something.
Why can't we just do what you said earlier and just look at the usage of the word? And see like how is this like for instance, if I were to go on Twitter and I were to tweet something out like trans people don't belong in cis sports because they're subhuman. That looks pretty transphobic. But if I'm talking to one person and I'm saying like, oh, this person is fucking subhuman, this is a subhuman fuck, like, where's the indication that like, where have I been, like, have I ever attacked these people because they're trans? Like on their transness? Isn't that kind of a prerequisite for it to be transphobic?
I agree that there are better and worse contexts to call someone subhuman, but I just don't think that it's like good regardless.
That's
I agree
fine,
that
but we're really far away from being transphobic. Why is everything transphobic? Why do you have to treat like trans people like they're like a special protected class?
It's because of the history of the word subhuman and the history of oppression that comes behind it.
I don't think that trans people's biggest like insult against them is subhuman. I don't even think that's one of them. I think that I can list like 10
I'm not saying
trans
it's the
slurs
biggest.
before subhuman.
Sure, I'm not saying it's the biggest. I'm just saying that it has a lot of history behind it.
But it doesn't.
Who legitimately believe that trans people are subhuman. Yes, it absolutely does.
I don't agree. I just don't agree with that.
I mean, maybe the thought there has a history, but not the usage of the word specifically. Like I've just said, it's an interesting reach, bro. I really just think that Ryan Beard dislikes Destiny a lot. I think that'll probably change. I saw his we saw his apology basically, but I just feel like he came into this like heated and loaded and because this isn't like the first fight he's had with Destiny. Like he's been fighting with Destiny since Destiny's ban. It seems like taking a bunch of shots. So I feel like it's just really coming from that place, honestly.
I think that there are a lot of slurs that are used against trans people. I don't think subhuman is one of them.
It's not like a regular.
I'm non-binary, so some people would consider me trans.
I don't, and I don't care. But okay.
Jesus Christ. Oh, holy shit. All right. I am genuinely curious as to why Destiny feels that way. I mean, I would absolutely say that somebody who's non-binary is simply listen, we could do a little thing. There's 4 aspects to really like who you are when it comes to like gender and sex. There is your gender expression. That's what you're expressing yourself as to society. There's gender identity. That's the way that you personally identify. There's pronoun usage, which is your pronouns, and then there's like your sex, your biological sex, right? So Ryan is somebody who you would say generally like as a he's a guy, he's biologically a male, and that's not used to be disparaging. He may identify as non-binary, but he expresses himself as a man, and then he uses like non-binary pronouns. I wouldn't say that an individual like that is anywhere near the same as somebody who has like somebody who's like really struggling heavily with their identity to the point where they maybe have gender dysphoria. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where I feel like in general nowadays, and this isn't to invalidate Ryan Beard's perspective, but people of any identity group are over-identifying with their identity, and it's diminishing other people. Like you see a lot of mainstream, like let's say autistic representation. A lot of people who are very incredibly high functioning, and I feel like it's kind of having, and it's not a bad thing that like you're high functioning autistic. Like of course that does exist, but it seems like there are people who are high functioning autistic who are talking over people who are like lower functioning, who need like a trauma or an incredible amount of help within the system. It would be similar like if I walked around and like I have Tourette's, like I have Tourette's, and I have OCD and I have ADHD. But like all of my shit is mild enough where I don't need any treatment. Like I used to need treatment, but I don't anymore. So that would be like if I was somebody who like kind of proclaimed myself a reasonable representation of people with these particular issues, but I'm not. I don't know the struggles of somebody who can't control their tics at all. Like I can control them sometimes, like moderately, but even like I'm doing it right now. Like my eyes are blinking. It's not really super distressful. It's annoying. But you know what I mean? It's not the same as somebody who, is fucking going into a bank shouting the N-word at somebody because it came into their mind. You know what I mean? It's a very different thing. But I wonder what Destiny means by that. I wonder if he goes in on it.
Wait, yeah, we don't have to discuss that.
Okay, I'm non-binary too, so don't worry.
Destiny, the ontological status of post-normative Russian blackness.
Yeah, no, legitimately to me, if someone were to call me subhuman, that feels like a real fucking like what the fuck did you just say? Like that feels like some real supremacist shit. I mean, maybe you.
But the thing is, love Ryan, no offense, but like nobody's going to make the assumption that you're even trans or in any capacity. Like on your scenario of a walk up to you on the street and say that you're subhuman. Like nobody would say that because you're trans, because nobody would know that you're trans because you identify and you use different pronouns. You don't express yourself in that capacity. So I don't think that this is like really super analogous. It's not really the same thing because your scenario relies on somebody walking up without any context and just saying you're subhuman. And so like if you did that to like a trans person and you knew they were trans, like yeah, for sure, that would probably saying it because they're trans because there's no other identifier. But again, if you're in a conversation with somebody and you just think they're fucking dumb, it's a very different scenario.
You just used it casually. You're like, oh, everyone is subhuman. But to me, when I hear subhuman, I think like that's fucking.
Do you think that's because you're non-binary, so you've never actually faced transphobia in your life before?
Why is that what you're jumping to?
Because as somebody that's been active in trans communities for like 5 years, I know what trans insults are, and I know when I see certain words, like when I hear people saying like "troon" or "trap" or stuff like, there's things I see, it's like, okay, this person is transphobic. But when you're saying like, wow, somebody called me subhuman, they must hate trans people, like, or that's like a really big insult.
I'm not making the argument that every single person in the trans community would see subhuman as the worst possible insult that you
no,
could
hold
give
on,
to someone.
don't hyperbolize me. I'm not saying it's the worst possible insult. I'm just saying that's not something that's generally like associated with, like, on its own. If you heard somebody say subhuman, you're like, oh wow, this person must be like a supremacist. Like, that's just not.
Okay, maybe from your perspective.
No, from everybody's perspective. Nobody thinks this. Nobody does. You're alone.
Okay, maybe I'm alone then. I have the perspective that calling people subhuman is a fucking supremacist thing to say.
I don't know, bro.
And maybe I am alone in this position, but I don't think you should call anyone subhuman. I don't think you should call white people subhuman, men subhuman. I don't think you should call anyone that.
Okay,
maybe I'm alone in that.
I think that you should call white people subhuman. It's funny. You call white people subhuman. It's okay.
I'm okay with that.
I don't think I am alone in that position because I saw a lot of people agreeing with me that subhuman is not a good thing that you should be calling people.
Well, it's probably not a good thing that you should be calling people, but then also within what context? In the context that people like hate Destiny a lot, and so they kind of want like they're like, oh, I don't like Destiny. He said this a bad thing. We're gonna kind of stretch the truth here a little bit. Like, in what context? And also saying that it's not a great word isn't the same as saying that it's like a racial slur. Those are two very different things.
So the reason why people are agreeing with you is because you're riding the anti-Destiny jerkwave for Twitter likes, okay? You can literally say anything you want about me right now. People will agree with you, okay? Welcome to the internet, okay? Number one. Number two, if you're opposed
you might think that.
I know that. It's my life, okay? Now, number two, you might think...
It's a little bit true, man. Destiny gets a lot of flack. I mean, some of it he probably deserves because he is he does say like fucking dumb shit, but I'm just saying.
I think that subhuman is like a bad insult. That's fine. That's a defensible position. But when you're making comments about me and you're saying that I'm transphobic, it is like, well, why? Well, because you use subhuman. I call everybody subhuman. How does that make...
What I said was, you said I'm against dehumanizing trans people, and then you're calling trans people subhuman. The only point that I'm making is that if you call a trans person subhuman, that is dehumanizing them. Would you agree with that?
No, that's like, you're using some like weird like minority speak, where if you, like, one minority person stands for all of them. If I think one trans person is a whatever, that doesn't mean I think all trans people are whatever. As long as I'm not using like a trans-specific slur.
I'm not saying all people. I'm saying that specific trans person. You are dehumanizing.
Oh, sure, that's fine.
Yeah, but not for their transes, just because they're dumb. Unless you're saying that they're dumb because they're trans, that seems to be the assertion that Ryan would be making here.
But I think it's okay. I'll dehumanize Nazis. There are individuals when I argue with them, I'll say, like, oh yeah, you're a fucking subhuman piece of shit.
Hey. Hot take, guys. Very disagreeable take. All Nazis are subhuman. All right? I know I'm alone in the crowd when I say that. That's a bold stand against bad people, but all Nazis are subhuman. Okay? All right?
Or an inbred fuck or whatever. But there's a difference. But
you gotta stand with me. Very proud. Very proud. I know this is the brave... I am very well aware that this is a brave take. Thank you so much. This is what we do on this channel here, guys. We take the bravest takes, and we hope that... You know, for all we know, tomorrow people are going to be like, you know what? I do think that Nazis are subhuman. I guarantee you, tomorrow, people are going to be saying it, and I'm not going to get credit for it. They're not going to credit me for coming up with this, but it's not about that. It's not about whether we're credited. It's not about us being credited. It's about doing the right thing and taking the harsh stances that nobody else will take. I'm a trailblazer. I am creating a space for politics on Twitch, and gaming. Hold on, okay. And nobody else is doing it. So to make sure I remove Destiny from the screen. Nobody else is doing it. You haven't seen a single example of that before in your life. At least not on my screen. What do you think about that?
If you're saying like, oh, we shouldn't use that insulting, like, that's fine, but it's not like I'm being transphobic or I hate trans people. I'm not attacking any of these people on the basis of them being trans.
I'm not saying you're attacking them on the basis of being trans.
That's what transphobic means.
Yeah, I know that.
I'm sorry. Yes, you did. You did that thing.
I think that more of what I would consider transphobic is you saying that they're inbred fucking losers, but I know that you're just saying that that's only towards a specific group of trans people.
Yo.
Do you think that's true, or do you think I'm lying? Do you think I actually think that all trans people are inbred fucking losers?
No, but I think it's more complicated than that. I think you're fostering a community of transphobia by calling the trans community inbred fucking losers.
I've heard this argument. This is like a lot of people are saying this in like the anti-Destiny like debate panels about his ban on Twitch, saying that like he's fostering and harboring a community of transphobic people. To be absolutely honest with you, I think it truly does come from just people genuinely disliking more like centrist leaning individuals, like more like, you know, moderate progressives. People fucking hate, I don't know what, the fucking lefty community, bro, hates moderate progressive. They meme the shit out of them. Oh, so you think that we should implement reasonable Medicare for all solutions that maintain a private option while also having a public option for people who can't afford it? Holy fuck, you're a fucking fascist. Like that is the like the anti-left, like the anti-fucking like reasonable minded you know, Twitter takes here. So I'm just saying, dude.
No, that's what I have to do to protect my community from becoming transphobic. Because if the online activist trans community on Twitter represented all trans people, I would be transphobic. Like, part of what I do is constantly reminding people that real life...
But see, that's what you just said. Why would that cause you to be transphobic?
Because the trans community on Twitter is a fucking cancerous blight on trans communities all over the world. These are like...
why would a group of people being annoying cause you to be
They're not annoying. They're destructive to society.
Okay, you think they're destructive. Why would that cause you to be transphobic? That doesn't logically...
He's saying that he would be transphobic compared to their ideology. Like, everything would be transphobic if the Twitter lefties were able to, or the Twitter trans people, if they were the ones that had control of what isn't transphobic, everybody would be transphobic. That's what he's saying. He's not saying that he would become magically transphobic. He's saying that like you would shift the goalposts of what it means to be transphobic. That's what he's saying.
Makes sense
because of because of a prerequisite to being a trans person was like the destruction of all of women's spaces and the destruction of like other like sects of society, like TERFs claim they all believe. Then like, okay, well, holy shit, maybe these are a group of people.
Like that is a vast oversimplification of.
You can call it oversimplification. I'm pretty sure I've argued with like 3 different people over the past week that claim that like women's sports should just be eliminated.
I definitely agree that there are some trans people on Twitter that are very like cancerous. I would definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, Keffels is one of them. More than cancerous. When you say somebody, how can you say somebody is cancerous and that's okay, but subhuman is not okay?
I'm fucking shitting Ed Cumming right now. What the fuck? Yeah, what's up, John? Yeah, I did see that. I put it on my YouTube, bro. Do you have my fucking phone number or anything, dude? I've been trying to reach out to you on Steam, but I can't find you, brother.
I'm not saying that.
You were saying that subhuman is not a disease, but cancer is okay. That's like a real disease that people suffer from. And a cancer, people have been described as a cancer. What does cancers need to be? They need to be removed. Isn't that technically a worse insult than subhuman?
I mean that I think that their ideas are cancerous.
So earlier I asked him...
Hey. Maybe somebody thinks that this other people's ideas are subhuman. There you go. That's the implication there.
Dumb fuck was like was a dehumanizing insult. Or if that was an insult about a person, you're like, no, that attacks their ideas. But... you say that calling someone a dumb fuck is attacking their ideas, but now we can't call somebody cancerous. We have to say their ideas are cancerous. I don't know. I don't care that much.
If I'm calling someone cancerous, I'm meaning that the things that they're putting on Twitter are cancerous.
So why is it that if I call somebody subhuman, what I can't mean is that like their ideas are just incredibly fucking stupid?
I mean, if you even saying someone's ideas are subhuman, that feels like you're saying that their ideas come from like a lower like.
That would be like the same thing as saying that your ideas are cancerous. Like, hey, your ideas are cancerous and need to be purged. What is he talking about? This is a very epic poggers moment here, brother.
Human or something. It just feels like a
like a dumb fuck. Like don't you think dumb fucks or idiots are lower types of humans? Or cancerous people are like lower types of humans?
Hating your life then, working class Andy.
I mean, no. I think that every person can have bad ideas and can be educated on them.
If I was debating, if we were back in 2017 and I'm arguing against Nazis and I'm like, God, a lot of these Nazis are fucking subhuman, would you have the same energy? Would you be like, I don't think we should call Nazis subhuman?
Well, I think we should just I think all Nazis are subhuman. Like, I don't care if that's your ideology, you're subhuman. Also Italians, just.
I mean, if I'm being honest, no, probably not.
What?
I feel like something that recently I've been getting more into is like that. You know, I'm definitely against misogyny, for example, but I don't think that a good response to that is to like.
Hey, let me tell you something. I am also against misogyny. I'm just waiting for the applause. Fucking trailblazing Papa God, baby.
Insult men necessarily, or I don't think a good response to like racism is to like insult white people. You know, so
which is fair.
Now I would be like, I will stand by saying that I don't think you should call anyone subhuman. I agree.
Which is again a fine position. But it doesn't make it transphobic.
I agree that maybe your motivations aren't transphobic from it, but I feel like it can foster transphobia in your community, and it can like enable transphobia, and it has a history.
I mean, listen, anything can do anything, bro. Anything can do anything. You know, I don't know what to tell you, man. This is like a reach. It's like, hey, listen, anything can do anything that exists. I mean, okay, incredible stuff. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
History of people thinking that trans people are subhuman. I agree that maybe.
But then, like, on the same time, it's like, oh, Destiny calls a trans person subhuman, and then what does Destiny do? He's constantly defending trans people outside of this sports argument. Like, he's constantly defending trans people. So I don't really think that he can foster the community whatsoever. It's a really, bro, it just feels like you wanted to have like an anti-Destiny day, and you felt pretty strong about it. And you know what? In Ryan's defense, he got manipulated by Twitter to think that these were good ideas and positions. But a lot of people will say and posture on Twitter about this shit because there's no accountability. They just like, yeah, Destiny's bad, and I'm gonna shit my pants. You know, that's pretty much the entire hot take machine. But you know, when you're one-on-one, all of a sudden you don't have the rallying cry of a bunch of people who, you know, obviously need to touch grass. So
personal internal motivations for calling someone subhuman might not be transphobic, but I think that the impact of it can lead to transphobia.
Sure, but that's a lot different than like you saying, how would Destiny respond to this? Actually, I only call the trans people who are mean to me subhuman, not all trans people, so that means it's not actually transphobic. That's true, but you're acting like that's a ridiculous thing to say.
Come.
Like if I say something like my friend Jamal is filthy, that's a lot different than saying all black people are filthy. Those are two totally different statements.
If you say my black friend Jamal is subhuman, I would be like, what?
I mean, it obviously would depend on the.
I mean, yeah, the context matters. But I mean, I imagine if you're friends, why would you call him subhuman, bro? It's fucking mean, dude. What the fuck did Jamal do, bro? The fuck did Jamal do? What the hell, dude? Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff.
Context of the statement, right? But that's like a really huge, like that's a pretty big insult anyway, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I just think I personally am not going to call any trans people or black people subhuman, but I don't know.
That's fine. But my issue is the rewriting of history where useful idiots like you are jumping onto these Twitter trends for likes, claiming that I'm transphobic, when I am absolutely not. And even you admit as much in this conversation. Why can't you come with this energy except redirect it towards, hey, we shouldn't use certain insults, instead of hopping on the fuck Destiny clout wagon of saying, wow, Destiny sure is transphobic, when both of us know that that's absolutely not the fucking case.
I don't know if it is the case. It feels like watching you recently, you've been making a lot more generalizations about the trans community and less like specific.
What position do I have?
Bro, I hate these arguments because like I've been on the receiving end of some of these. Obviously, not to this degree because you know Destiny is an actual person, but. Bro, it's like, hey, this past week you've been saying things that I disagree with. So I believe that you're heavily generalizing and say bad things. But you want to know what? It's it's an incredible generalization to say that like subhuman is some kind of a slur against trans people. That is the definition of a fucking generalization. You are generalizing and saying that like how do you have this position? You're doing the same thing. Usually when you're talking in the context of like sports, like, yeah, when we talk in the context of like entire communities, you speak in a very general sense. The entire concept of systemic racism is based on a generality, right? If we didn't base them on generalities, I'd be just like, hey, Oprah Winfrey exists, systemic racism doesn't because there's rich black people. That's all it is. Like, I don't understand. Like, what the fuck? Like, we make generalities about society because that's usually how we collect and we distribute data. But when it comes to individuals, that's a different scenario, which is exactly the position of Destiny here, where it's like, hey, guys, when you call an individual a bad thing, it's okay. But if you say their entire identity is that bad thing, that's where it becomes a problem, right? You can call somebody a fucking subhuman because they're stupid. It's different than saying that's because they're like trans or something.
That's transphobic. What generalization have I made that's transphobic? I'm not even asking. I'm not looking for like specific, like, gotcha, like, give me the timestamp. I'm just curious, like, in your mind, because it feels like this is the cycle that I go through, okay? Insane fucking lunatics from the trans community on Twitter, people that identify as fucking ponies and use pronouns written in other languages, okay? Start fighting with me over dumb shit. I end up like getting exasperated. I'm like, okay, well, you know, the online trans community is fucking insane. People will clip like a part of this, and now people like you are caught in the center, like, oh wow, like Destiny sounds like he hates all trans people. Which
I wonder, truthfully, honest question to Destiny. If these people are so fucking like insane, stupid, and don't matter, why do you continue to engage with them if you know that the outcome is going to be this? Like, if you're saying that you've been down this path before, where you will talk to outliers in a particular community, so in this instance, the trans community, fucking insane people that are pony gender, and they say, hey, fuck Destiny, and then you say that like why do you respond to it? Like, I understand why do you respond to it? Is it for content? Is it because you're bored? I think that Destiny has like a legitimate fucking mental disorder or something. Like, this is hysteria. Like, obviously what Ryan is doing is wrong 100%, but not for nothing. But you know this is what's going to happen. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep going through this? Like, is it because if you feel like you don't respond to the fucking lunatics that you're just gonna make you look worse? I mean, maybe. I feel like it's more because Destiny loves, she just loves controversy and loves to jerk himself off. And at some point, you got to understand that maybe you're like a little bit part of the problem. Is it a shame kink? I wouldn't fucking doubt it, bro. That's why he lets his girlfriend or wife get fucking cocktailed. So he's letting her get cocked, bro. It's that shame factor. I mean, maybe that's it, dude. Maybe he just likes it. It's the public cuckening.
Just like never been the case ever.
I don't think that you have to hate all trans people to be transphobic in some way. I feel like from what I've been seeing, it feels like you are getting a negative perspective of trans people because of the like interactions you're having with trans people.
Okay, but me hating some groups of trans people isn't transphobic.
But don't you agree that just saying the trans community is inbred fucking losers, like, you should be more careful if you're going to say shit like that? Like,
the trans community online.
I know, but that's not what you said.
It is. Well, that's the whole context of the conversation. Every single person listening to that conversation knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's so prevalent that even people like Vosh have gone on the exact...
I love that. I love that. Destiny is Will Smith. Holy fuck, bro. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff, guys. I don't know why we're doing the Destiny cuck meme, because it's just funny to me. It's funny to me that he might see it and it might just like not even like upset him in any elongated sense, but just that he would just like, you know how he's saying here, people will say a bunch of dumb shit about him and then they'll wear him down and he gets upset, and I just think that's funny. That's all I have to say.
Exact same rants. Way worse than me, by the way. I don't know if you've seen his rants, but they're like really extreme in the past about like how the trans community online is fucking insane. Even trans people online will say this sometimes. People like TapJap, or people in I always fuck her name, or people in my community, like other trans creators. Even ContraPoints has fought with these people. Like, this isn't even a controversial opinion.
I think that it's totally fair to single out certain trans people. I don't think it's a fair generalization to say, like, the online trans community or all trans people on Twitter or whatever. Like, I do feel like you're overgeneralizing. I do think that there are a very vocal minority of people who...
You're overgeneralizing, like, the fucking insane online leftist trans people. Okay.
Who, you know, aren't consistent in their opinions on things, but I feel like you've been going down this spiral of definitely painting them out more negatively than they deserve.
Okay, who have I been unfair to online?
It's less that you've been unfair to like specific people. It's more that I feel like you've been generalizing the online trans community or whatever.
I'm not, though. They're cancerous. It's like the worst thing that can exist. It's like rank 1 is like Republican lawmakers, and then rank 2 is the trans community on Twitter in terms of things that damage the trans community.
And you don't think saying that could enable transphobic people to be like, oh, I want to follow Destiny now?
Oh, what a horrible thing if you follow somebody who speaks positively to trans people. Not for nothing, I'll tell you right now, if anything, I think that it probably de-radicalizes people, because you want to know what? I'm guaranteeing you that there's large groups of people who are looking at like online fucking leftist trans people, like insane people that, you know, they like to say that they're activists, and they'll say insane fucking shit. Like, if you won't have sex with me, then you're transphobic. And they're going, well, I don't believe that, so I guess I'm transphobic now. If anything, Destiny is targeting those people to be like, hey, they're fucking stupid. Trans people still matter, but they're not a good representation of trans people. If anything, Destiny's doing a positive thing by you know, making it so that people don't get camped, because that's what happens. Most people get camped. It's like the yes or the no's. Like, if you have a bunch of insane fucking you know, Twitter trans people that are going off like on a fucking bender and saying everybody's transphobic for having basic human emotions, like I don't want to have sex with a trans person, then you're gonna be like, fuck it, I'm transphobic and I don't care. That's a huge thing. That's like a huge part of an issue, is that especially like the lefty area, I don't know, they're they exclude everybody that doesn't agree with them exactly, like fucking infinitely on every stupid dumb fuck point. So, you know, I don't know, man. It does feel like Ryan feels because he like is part of the trans community in some capacity that he's a good representation of it, but I don't think that he has ever gone through like the life experience that would allow him to speak from a point of authority on this topic. No offense, but
no, I think I like, well, maybe, I don't know, but if I get more transphobic people following me, that's a huge fucking plus, because I argue in favor of trans people literally all the time. I did it in my last conversation with Nick. I joked about it at the end. Yeah, of course. But like, part of why I have to say this shit is to like hedge my community against the fucking lunatics in these communities online, because they make trans people look fucking crazy. And not all trans people are like these fucking lunatics on Twitter that use fair pronouns and identify as fucking deer.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think you're a good advocate for the trans community because you know, are against neopronouns, against non-binary people, against trans women in sports, against I think you even said within like a Mr. Girl conversation that like trans people are only valid if they have trans brains or something. Like, I don't think you're necessarily a good advocate for what trans people.
Wait, so do you think
believe.
that anybody can be trans?
I think trans is an identity thing. I think it's a social construct.
Okay, so you're transphobic.
I mean, you might think that. Are you?
No, you think?
I really want to hear the Destiny's line of logic here, because I think it is insane that everybody will just say that they're trans, because not for nothing, and I think it's totally fine to explore your identity. I think that's totally fine, and like, you know, play with your gender pronouns and whatever. But does that necessarily make you a trans person? You know what I mean? Or does that just make you, I mean, does it make you somebody that's exploring? Or does that make you somebody that's like clout riding? Not to be a fucking asshole, but there does seem to be a lot of rhetoric, and I think that maybe Ryan Beard would just kind of perpetuate that, where if you are non-binary, then you are trans. Like you fall within like the trans blanket, and then we tend to look at it in this sense where it's like, okay, well, you're trans, your struggle as a trans person is equal to the struggle of a trans person who like grew up and knew they were trans from the age of 4 and were like relentlessly beaten by their fucking parents, and then they had like all these fucking problems, and like they have like deep connection to a particular thing. Like it feels like we don't look at things well enough in the spectrum. Like I would say that in the spectrum, like you're not really, your experience isn't anywhere near someone else who's like gone through it, you know, especially not somebody with gender dysphoria that needs like, you know, therapy and you know, what is it called now, gender confirmation surgery. I don't remember the specific. Somebody that like needs, you know, more specialized help. You know?
You think trans is fake? You don't think it's a real thing? You think that it's just some shit that people say online for attention, like Demon Mama and all these people are just, they identify as it because it's like a socially constructed whatever.
I don't think trans is fake. I think social constructs are real. I think that America is real, even though it's a social construct.
But you think that somebody being trans is just an identity that you pick. There's not like an underlying fact of the matter. Like this person has
I think
you think that when trans people choose to be trans, that's just like it's like an identity that they kind of pick for themselves, and they're just like, oh, like I'm trans. There's not like an underlying fact of the matter of like their brain being wired to be trans.
I mean,
it probably doesn't have to be brain wiring necessarily. You could probably have like some kind of like impactful scenario. It could be biological. It could be, well, this is the thing, you can get into it. It could be biological, like something in the brain. It could be environmental, where maybe there was some kind of like an experience that you had that would like make you trans in some capacity. Or maybe it's within the womb. I don't think that we consider that enough too. Like, just, I mean, this is like a fascinating thing to me, where they study that apparently, you know, every successive man that you have in a family has a higher chance of being gay, and that's something only observed in men. And the only reason I say that is because like it just shows that there's like the theory there that you could change in the womb, and it's not necessarily a genetic thing. Maybe the being in the womb for 9 months could have like some kind of an impact. Maybe there's like too much estrogen. I don't really know. But yeah, it makes sense to have some kind of an underlying thing to be able to identify as trans. Like, what is your underlying situation that makes you feel like you want to identify as trans? Because if you're just like, oh, I want to experiment, it's like, okay, do you? But like, would you call that person trans? I don't know. I don't know if I would. I don't think I would. I think that might be like a little, hey, you know what that is? I think that's an overgeneralization. I think that's an overgeneralization. You know? So
that some people experience like gender dysphoria from birth, and that's like a pretty good indicator that they're trans.
I don't even know if you experience gender dysphoria from birth. I think that
I don't know from birth, from a very young age.
I think that most of it starts in really hardcore puberty. But regardless, like fuck.
I haven't seen evidence one way or the other whether there are like male or female brains.
Okay, it's one of the like most important, arguably, parts of like the trans discussion, right? Is like, are trans people a real thing, or is it just like a social phenomenon from like the LGBT community talking to kids too much? I don't know why we would ever.
Interesting. I know, that's fucking interesting, brother. I never really looked at it like that. Interesting stuff.
Ever as left-leaning
What do you
people.
mean talking to kids too much? You think social constructs come from... See, this is the thing.
Well, no, wait, finish that sentence. Finish that sentence. Do I think social constructs come from, like, the way that we interact with each other socially? Yes. That's why they're called a social construct. It's some categorization that a community agrees on and then socially reinforces. That's the conservative argument for where trans people come from. They say trans people exist because you have all these crazy LGBT people online that are talking to our kids about trans stuff all day, and now they become trans. That's like the conservative argument. The left-leaning argument used to be, no, there is an underlying fact of the matter that some people have brains that are wired differently in ways that don't match their body. And because their brains don't match that way, and because how we socially constructed gender, the difference is so great, and sometimes even your body is so great, people have dysphoria, they kill themselves, they need like gender reaffirming care in order to like match their mind with their body. But you're just saying that it's that mind-body match is just whatever. It's all just socially constructed. Doesn't make any sense.
Is America real?
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that ideology just says like, hey, like, you know, bro, that's fucking crazy. I never really thought of it like that. You know, and again, I don't know if you need it needs to be biological. I just think that it needs to be reasonably rooted. Like, what does it mean to you to identify as non-binary? Like, if somebody called it, like, what does it really matter to you? It's like, I just like it. It feels nice. It's like, okay, well, is that really any justifiable factor compared to somebody who may have like a legitimate amount of dysphoria associated with it or frustrations? You know, I'm not saying everybody needs a diagnosis, but like if you can't really justify like what did it mean to you, I mean, are you really trans?
If America is socially constructed,
like, do non-binary people need to fall under the trans blanket? Like, why can't non-binary people just be non-binary? Why does it have to be somebody that's like transgender? You know what I mean? Why does it have to be? Because it just feels like it's diminishing to trans people with like very real experiences.
Like
America
are real.
No, hold on. America is real in that America is like borders drawn on a map that we all agree on. But we can't socially construct away America.
Is the English language real?
Is your arm real?
Yes.
Okay, is your brain real?
Yes, what are you saying?
Okay, so inside your brain, do you think that you have a very real perception of your gender? Or do you think that's just some shit that like society agrees on and then you just like grab that from thin air?
I think that it can be both. Like I was saying, there are people who have gender dysphoria and it's not being influenced by any social...
Okay, I'm just gonna preach you for like 2 seconds, okay? And then you can ignore everything I'm saying. So like, hey, now I'm doing this in good faith. I hope you're here in good faith, okay? And it's just a brief, quick thing, okay? So for the longest time, when people have discussions about what does it mean to be a trans person, okay? What is a trans person? There have been two prevailing historically schools of thought on this. The conservative school of thought is trans people are fake, okay? They hear a lot of weird gay shit growing up. They don't have moms or dads. Their minds are fucked. And all of a sudden they hit puberty and now they think they're the other gender. That's bullshit. That's what trans people are. We need to get rid of the crazy LGBT stuff in society. We need to roll all this shit back, all the degeneracy. We need to get these kids moms and dads, and that will make people stop being trans, because the trans stuff is just some weird thought that kids are having. That's the conservative take. That's been the conservative take. That's why you get people like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson talking about how important it is to have structured families, and where all the weird trans and gay stuff comes from is usually broken homes and abuse when you're a child. That's where it comes from. Number one, okay? That's the one school of thought. The other school of thought was, well, hold on. If we take a look at people's brains, there are actually like male brains and female brains. It might be the case that you have somebody born in a body where the type of brain that they have is incongruent with the body they have. The internal identity of gender does not match the external gender expression of that person's biological body. And because this mismatch can cause so much distress in a person, we can actually give a name to that, gender dysphoria, and we can have treatments to bring the body more in line with the brain. That's like been the two prevailing like fights that have been happening for where transness comes from. When you
that's like a conservative straw man of the position that just because something is socially constructed doesn't mean it's like a cancer that needs to be like eradicated.
But if it's socially constructed, we could just get rid of it with social treatment, right? What you're saying is essentially we should be able to, at least from an early age, if we have the right guidance, talk people out of being trans. No? If it's a socially constructed thing.
Why would you want to talk people out of being trans?
Because being trans fucking sucks. What do you mean?
I mean,
bro, he's not wrong. This is the I feel like this is the take nobody really wants to like talk about. Like honestly, who really wants to be like marginalized in any capacity? Do you think that trans people are having a good old gay old time? Oh, I'm trans. This is great. No, it's horrible. So if there was a way to socialize people away from being trans that was safe, not fucking electrocuting them, you're arguably that's your best bet, right? So like I'm sure that there's a level of some kind of social conditioning, but I don't think it's as simple as, oh my god, gay people exist, I am now gay, or I'm trans now. You know, I would imagine it would be a much deeper, like more methodical, like outlier type scenario that exists if there is like a social conditioning factor there. But yeah, who the fuck wants to be like confused? Like nobody really wants to be different. Like see, this is the thing. People want to feel different, but nobody wants to be different. Who really wants to like be different, bro? Like it's you get looked at differently constantly, and everybody should be able to identify with this. I mean, like I'm a fat dude. You know, you think I want to be fat? fat acceptance is an issue. See, this is the problem. Fat acceptance comes down now to be like, yeah, it's cool to be fat. It's good to be fat. It's horrible. I hate being fat. Do you like? I make conscious bad choices to eat poorly, and like it's my fault. But you want to know what? It's rooted in like some kind of like weird fucking stress factor or like some kind of like personal hatred for myself. There are days where I go through waves of like wanting to like not even wanting to die, but just not caring if I did. Like these are real experiences, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna overeat today, and guess what? That experience that you had when you're in like your worst state of fucking mind, where you don't care if you die, like, and you're like, fuck it, I'll just have this like really disgusting slice of pizza, even though I'm diabetic and I have like high blood pressure and I have like a fatty liver disease and I have like all these other things. I'm just gonna eat this because I don't care if I fucking wake up tomorrow. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like nobody, you don't want to be fat. You don't want to have the underlying issues of like fucking being fat. You don't want to have these like different like incredibly poor destructive eating habits and like fucking you know, I don't want to like ham it up, but like potential mental struggles that are associated with it. It's not good to be fat. Nobody wants to be fucking marginalized. It's an insane thing. Like trans people don't want to be trans. Like a trans one wants to be. Guess what? They want to be. They wish they were born a fucking woman. Like that's the entire foundation for their frustration. And I feel like we don't talk about this because like somehow that's transphobic to acknowledge it. Like it fucking sucks. It's fucking rough, brother. It's some rough ass shit, man. It's like a deep fucking rough ass fucking thing.
I don't think that you should try to talk people out of being trans.
That's because you're cis, because you have no fucking idea what the experience is like. Why do you think people use the 41 insult, the numbered shit so much? So many fucking trans people have like problems with suicidality. So many trans people, depending on your body going through puberty, are fucked for their entire life because they don't all have the same money that ContraPoints or Keppels has. They can't afford $50,000 of facial reconstruction surgery and massive fake boobs in order to bring their body in line what they want. Some of these people will look like men for their entire lives. That's why they're called troons. So don't just say like, well, I think everybody, that would be great if they could all be trans and everybody, that's fine. No, if we could
it's like that fun meme where someone's like, someone where people will say like, oh, non-passable trans people are valid, and it's like, great, thanks. Like that, what does that do for me? Like, what does saying that do for anybody? Oh, I think you're valid. What does validity mean to you? It's, you know what I mean? It doesn't really change anything.
Have people not be trans from an earlier age, wouldn't you want to avoid all of those problems?
I'm not discrediting the pain that comes with gender dysphoria, and I don't think there's evidence that you can just talk someone out of having gender dysphoria, and I think that the evidence shows that the best treatment for gender dysphoria is gender-affirming care, but that doesn't mean that I think that people who don't have gender dysphoria aren't actually trans. I don't think that you have to have gender dysphoria to be valid.
It's not about whether you have to have gender dysphoria. It's the idea that it's all just socially constructed. It seems like like, why would we use surgery to fix like something that's just like socially constructed? Like, shouldn't we be able? Why wouldn't we be able to talk somebody out of being trans? It's just like a socially constructed thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you that if someone at a young age is having gender dysphoria, that's probably something that's happening in their brain. It's not just socially constructed. I'm not saying it's only.
Or listen, Destiny's entire point here is like, hey, listen, if everything is purely a social construct and there's no foundation of reality in that thing, then you can simply socialize somebody out of that particular behavior, right? And he brought up before, like, oh, is your arm a social construct, right? Because your arm exists, is it objectively there? However, the social construct is that your arm is called a fucking arm. Like the way that you categorize, you know, your fucking cock and your balls. Like, hey, why don't we call your entire, like we call it genitals, but why cock and balls? Why left ball, right ball? Where did we come up with these like socially constructed ideas? Language is a social construct. How did we come up with these particular terms for these particular things and these particular identifiers? That's what he's referring to. Social constructs are rooted in an actual like objective reality. So like, yeah, gender is socially constructed, but that doesn't mean that it's just like all willy-nilly, loosey-goosey, poopy diarrhea that's everywhere shitting all over my pants. It doesn't mean that it's not something that's grounded in some kind of a reality. It's like, yeah, gender is socially constructed, but does that mean that there's no like biological foundation in like the concept of gender? No, you'd be like, oh, there is like an actual objective thing there.
Socially constructed necessarily. I'm just saying that I haven't like seen the evidence of like the male brain and the female.
You should Google like differences between trans brains. It exists. There's like, it's like the basal base meta. There's some weird.
It doesn't have to be the only reason that trans people are different is because of their brains either. Like, you know, obviously, you know, the fucking. I'm sure that they haven't zeroed in on everything, because if it was purely in your brain, you could probably do brain scans to figure it out. Like, I'm sure there's other factors, you know. You know, it's independent of trans people. Like, oh, maybe it's your brain. Maybe there was like an incredibly traumatic experience that happened. Like, I remember there was somebody in my school who was they were trans. They were a trans man, and they aren't anymore. They detransitioned. But what happened is like their brother died like in a horrific manner. And so, like, there was some kind of a thing there where, like, they were trying to, like, live on in spirit in some capacity. Like, it was some insane shit that I personally just don't understand. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways for it to happen, but the fundamentally, like, why? It's the why. Like, hey, why are you non-binary? Oh, well, I'll kill myself if I don't identify as non-binary and get some kind of top surgery. Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. Hey, why are you non-binary? Why are you non-binary? Oh, I like it. Okay. What does that mean to you, though? What does that really mean to you? And it's one of those things where it feels invalidating because, like, I can never prove that your identity doesn't mean anything to you, but I can make generals, like, what does it mean to you? And you can always go, you don't know me. You don't know me. But it's like, well, what does it actually mean to you? Like, why? It seems like there are people who are dishonest about their identity so that they can be, like, trenders in some capacity. It's not all of them at all. But some people do that, and it feels diminishing because most people look and go like, they're fucking full of shit. You could look at some fucking person and you can be like, that's full of shit. You know what I'm saying? Not all the time. Sometimes you might get it wrong, but a lot of times you could be like, oh, that person's full of fucking shit. But if you're nutting up, if you're like, yeah, I'm going to a therapist and taking hormones, like, okay, that person is probably not faking it. You know what I mean? So yeah, man.
Of the brain that are different in men and women. But like, even if that scientific research didn't exist yet, though, I'm just curious, like, in your perception of this, like, why wouldn't we just try to talk every trans person out of being trans from an early age if we thought that it was purely a socially constructed thing with no underlying biological fact of the matter?
I don't agree that just because, I mean, I think that the high rates of trans suicides are mostly being caused by society treating them like shit, and I think we can get those rates down if we stop treating them like shit.
That's not the question, though, because even though society treats trans people like shit, like, people, I mean, that's an argument that like, yeah, society treats trans people like shit and has negative impacts on trans people. Hot take, right? However, what causes them to be trans in the first place? Logically speaking, if you identify a society that hates trans people, why would you want to be trans? Well, you wouldn't, because you want to check it out. Being trans isn't a choice, right? So people are still doing that even with, like, horribly oppressive societies. So why would you, being trans acts against your self-preservation? Because people might fucking kill you because you're trans. So why would you choose that in a society that hates trans people? I wonder why. Oh, maybe it's because, like, even though there might be a social aspect there, there's a foundation that made it happen. Maybe you have different brain chemistry. Maybe you have low testosterone. Maybe you have high estrogen. I don't fucking know. Maybe I'm not a fucking doctor, so I don't know the specifics, but there's an underlying cause. It's interesting that Ryan, like, this would be something that I would probably be floored by if I talked to Destiny about it initially, and I would be like, wow, that's a really interesting point. It's just so interesting, the reactions of people is like that, is to just kind of double down and talk yourself in a circle.
And I think that the best, like, people are going to have gender dysphoria, whether it's purely biological or whether it's, you know, only a social construct. So whether it's a social construct or it is biological, we should, you know, treat people with gender dysphoria as well as possible and give them the best treatment.
Okay, but
by the way, I think that there was a society, I don't remember specifically, I remember watching, like, a video about it, where they would identify, like, gayer men, because, like, young gay kids, I guess, boys, they tend to be more feminine, and they would socialize them to be, like, in this, I think it was like a woman role or in, like, an interesting role. And I also think that there's a society in some kind of a Russian thing area. My wife did a paper on it a long time ago. She can't remember the specifics, where they would socialize, like, young girls as boys if they didn't have any, like, girls in the family. So, like, you could consider that trans to some capacity. I'm just saying that there could be a social factor, but it seems you have to be very intentional about it. I don't think that meeting a drag queen is going to make you fucking, your penis explode and you're to start having suicidal thoughts. It might make you horny, though. Might make you horny. By the way, what are they? I think it's yeah, you know who makes me horny? I know that they're not trans, but these two, my wife watches them. Not bad, brother. Not bad. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying, bro.
It still doesn't answer the question of whether we think there might be, like, an underlying fact of the matter in somebody's brain that makes them trans. It's not just like they watched the wrong cartoons growing up or something.
I'm not saying they watched the wrong cartoons growing up. Like,
what are you saying?
Yeah, I feel like you have this idea that being trans is, like, a negative thing, whereas for some people it can be a freeing thing because they feel like their entire lives they've been stuck in a box that...
No, So it's no. So the argument isn't that once you finally realize you're trans, of course you're going to feel better than before the fact that you were able to identify that you were trans. That's not the argument. It's that people generally you wouldn't want to be trans because it comes with levels of oppression. I don't think Ryan understands this. People should be able to fundamentally identify with struggle, and if you struggle with this, it makes me feel like you may have lived like a privileged life. I'm just saying, bro. Like fundamentally, like that's what they're saying. They're not saying like, you know, you saying like, hey, like let's say I was gay. Let's say I loved penis, right? And I finally came to the conclusion that I'm gay, and I came out and I said it. That would be an incredibly amazing, freeing experience for me. However, if I lived in an area that hated gay people, like, and that's the social aspect, of course, I would feel like very stressful about it. Now, you can make an argument that trans people, that suffering would go away, but I don't think it does. I think that part of it is that society speaks down on trans people, but I think that part of it too is it's just like something to really grip with. Like, could you imagine being trans? Let's say society loved the trans people, and you were trans. You still, what is it about? Why are you trans? Well, I have like this feeling that I was born in the wrong body, and like I have horrible dysphoria. But everybody's nice to me. They're still going to have like this suffering, and you know what they would say? They would say, I wish I wasn't trans. Like, hey, I'm a guy, I'm a biological male that is like, I'm a trans woman. I wish I was born a woman. Even if you had an accepting society, people would still feel that way. This idea that everything would just disappear if we were just nice to each other it's interesting. It's a very interesting concept that I don't agree. I just disagree. It's just fucking crazy, brother. It's crazy shit.
Doesn't like work for them, and then they find something that does work for them. Like, I feel like you have this very negative, like, of course the high rates of suicide among trans people is a very like pressing thing that we need to work on, but I don't view like being trans as a negative thing in the same way that you do.
In the same way that a lot of trans people do, right? It's
well, I mean,
like dysphoria isn't just like my mom and dad were mean to me yesterday.
No, I know.
Right?
I understand. It's like a
like a deep disgust with the way that your body looks and the incongruency with how you view yourself, your mind. Something that I only go by like what people email me and tell me because I've never experienced it before, so I can't even say it. But like,
Sam, I'm fucking absolutely perfect and beautiful, so I honestly can't identify with that at all.
Like, there was an email that I had back and forth with a lady who I've referenced this a couple times to talk about, because she would have money for drugs for HRT and then she'd lose money, and like this visceral disgust that she would feel as she could see like the distribution of fat around her body was just like this. It's a very not a socially constructed thing. Like,
no, I'm not trying to discredit gender dysphoria in any way, and I would agree with you that trans people who suffer from gender dysphoria are definitely having a harder time than trans people who aren't suffering from gender dysphoria. I mean, I've suffered from like gender or body dysmorphia, like thinking that my body looks different than it actually does, and that fucking sucks. And so, you know, I can't imagine how hard it is to suffer from gender dysphoria.
You got to get good, brother. You got to get a better body, you know what I'm saying? You got to become an Adonis like me. Adonis Papa Gut. Big penis Papa Gut. Let me tell you something. For all you young men, if you have a small wiener, okay, it gets bigger as you get older. I'm telling you, brother. It gets thicker. It does. And I need you guys to understand that. Not because I've ever struggled. I just feel like you guys needed to know that in case any of you were struggling.
Dysphoria, so I'm not trying to discredit that in any way.
Sure, but like when you say like people love being trans because it's freeing, and then you talk about how like, well, when they get on drugs it helps them. That's like saying people love being disabled because when they get a wheelchair they can move around so much more. Like no, trans people that get on HRT are catching up to cis people in terms of finally feeling comfortable in their body.
Sure, but that's still a positive thing for them.
Yeah, it's a positive thing to get, but you're still overall a negative. They would still say, hey, I wish I didn't need to take this shit. If only there was a way to magically socialize myself out of it. There is. You can socialize people out of being trans, kind of. It's by having them transition. You know what I mean? Like, that's your best way to socialize them out of being trans. Or I would have to say socialize them out of being trans. That's where the quotes would go. Just put a quotes around everything, just for fun, you know?
I just don't agree with your idea that being trans is a negative thing. I think it is something that causes a lot of people distress, and in that case, it might be a negative thing, and that they need to, you know, work towards.
I'm going to try to meet you. I'm saying meet you in the middle, but I'm trying to come like 95% your direction. We can conceive of a world where so much gender affirming care exists, like puberty blockers, trans people, that like being trans isn't necessarily a negative thing, like because we can alleviate all of these issues socially and scientifically or medically, right? That's the world that you're pointing towards.
I think that the trans experience is worse for some people than it is for others.
That's
I think
meaningless
people who
statement, but sure, okay.
I think people who suffer from very intense gender dysphoria are going to have a worse experience than people who don't suffer from as much gender dysphoria. Which is why I understand that the trans people who do suffer from a lot of gender dysphoria are like, oh, these trans people think it's just a social construct and they're not the same as me because they don't have gender dysphoria. And I can empathize with them that they're going through this deep pain and they're like, you know, it's not fair that these people aren't going through the same pain that I am. Like, I totally can empathize with that.
Okay. I guess, I don't even know what else. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I guess I just still was confused why, like, you said that, like, we shouldn't call, I was like, well, the reason why some black people call white people cracker is, like, because they're racist, not because they, like, hate white people. And you didn't want to, like, accept that argument, but I feel like you have kind of made that argument as far as, like, why you should be able to use certain insults.
Because like, I don't think you should. Racist. I think generally you probably shouldn't use like targeted insults towards people that are like a targeted insult towards a category that we wouldn't want to target. So like stupid is probably okay because it's okay to like make fun of people that have dumb ideas or are being stupid. But like cracker or I'll say the N-word or like fag or any of these words, like we probably
fucking pro gamer Destiny. Come on, bro. Okay. Fucking pro gamer words here, dude. What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? I would like you to add the R slur in there because I think that we need to seriously push against using the R slur, bro. I know people are like, Papa Gun, you're like, fuck you. Bro, after watching that like thing with like the young kids with Down syndrome talking about how like hurtful that word is, just generally using it, I was like, we really should categorize that word in the same way that we categorize these other fucking slurs. So I want to bring it up.
Probably shouldn't say these because we're kind of like targeting characteristics that we shouldn't view negatively. Like it shouldn't be considered a negative to be gay or a negative to be black, right? So we should, or a cracker, like a negative to be white, right?
Yeah, well, I just feel like.
But subhuman can apply to literally anybody. Like anybody could be subhuman or inbred. It's like it's just a general.
Especially trans people. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. Okay. Don't worry, I'm woke. I'm down with the swirl. I don't know what that means.
Fucking insult.
But what if you call a black person subhuman and then they take it as racist because you're like a white person calling them subhuman? Like
somebody said, as somebody on the spectrum, I personally don't mind the R slur. It's from somebody also R slur if it's from somebody also on the spectrum. Yeah, that's fair. However, I am not personally a fan of it. I get what you're saying. I'm not a fan of it either. Like, I mean, I've used it, obviously. I mean, I guess I could argue, well, I have ADHD. Everybody's fucking like mentally incongruent or whatever in some capacity. Like anybody can say that they have the right to say that slur in some capacity nowadays. Like, oh, I'm quirky. That's what it is. Now everybody has like epic poggers quirky syndrome. You know what I mean? Like that's what I have. Like very low of anything. So, you know, I would generally be wary of people who are incredibly high functioning on any spectrum, regardless, ADHD spectrum, autism spectrum, any spectrum. I would be generally, I wouldn't look to them as advocates or justifiers of the term, if that makes sense. Like I wouldn't go like, yeah, this person that like people struggle more than other people. You know what I'm saying? And listen, if you want to use it in private, be my guy. I don't care. You can fucking throw off any pro gamer word you want in private. How the fuck am I gonna know? I don't care. But we're talking about more in like public spaces, and I'm not saying we should ban the word, but I think that we should at least keep the same energy with the R slur as we do with any other slur. Honestly.
Then I think they're a little baby bitch that's weaponizing their identity for internet points. I think that if you're a mature human being, I think you can figure out when people are. I think that you can figure out when people are being racist towards you. The most racist shit I ever heard in my life growing up towards black people never had anything to do with slurs. It was usually the words gangsters and thugs. That's usually what I heard growing up. That like was the most like oof kind of shit that made me feel uncomfortable when conservatives would talk about black people.
Well, yeah, I think like
when I was younger, I once fist bumped a black person that my mom worked with for the black people creating rock and roll. So I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about that information, but I felt like you guys would have wanted to hear it. You know what I'm saying? You guys probably were like, you know what, Papa God, I really needed to hear that information. So there you go. Good for you.
That's not good either.
But those aren't slurs. Neither of those words are slurs. They're not even really like hugely insulting word technically. But like what that stuff is.
It's making generalizations about their community.
Well, it depends. It might. Maybe you're actually talking about somebody that's acting thuggish.
Well, yeah, but it's like making associations with their community. And
sure, but
like,
what
you see that could like also apply to
thug.
making generalizations about the trans community?
I'm a thug.
Like what you said earlier in the conversation about that they've been like talking to kids too much. Don't you like see that you're like implying that trans people are predators or something?
That's not my argument. That's when people say that just being trans is just a social construct. That's what conservatives argue. That like LGBT groups talking to kids are turning them trans because it's all socially constructed.
I genuinely don't think that Ryan is understanding what Destiny was saying there when he brought up that argument. I think that's what the disconnect comes there. You know, Begrosh the Dervish. I don't know. Oop, I muted it.
Turning them trans because it's all socially constructed.
I don't think that like a left-leaning group telling children that trans people exist is turning them trans, even if it is a social construct.
Okay.
Yeah, Destiny agrees. Okay.
That's great, but I'm just saying that's like the conservative argument for when they call it a social construct. Is that like it's something that like people can basically
the reality is that social constructs are rooted in some reality. That's literally the point here, and that it's not all just magic made up words for people to feel better about themselves. That's the entire point that's trying to be reinforced here.
Socialized into.
Socialize me, daddy.
Well, I don't think that.
Spank me, father.
I know that you don't think that. That's great that you don't think that. I'm just saying that when you say it's socially constructed, that's what it sounds like. That like trans people aren't actually real. It's just kind of like an identity that people kind of like have in society.
Okay, is the English language real?
Yes.
Okay, well then that means that trans people would still be real even if it's a social construct.
But the English language, it's an agreed thing upon all of us. We all agree like what words mean and what words do. That's what a language is. But like your personal, like the fact of the matter about your body isn't usually a social agreement.
Yeah, like different things are constructed socially in different ways based off of different things. Like again, the way that we label your body is a difference in the way that's socially constructed versus the way that we will generally label a gender. That's it. Like, you know, I don't like this existence of social constructs means that like everything is completely not rooted in any level of reality, and anybody can just kind of pick and choose, and it's like, well, then what's the weight of being trans at that point? That's the general argument.
Like if I ask if you have like a penis or a vagina, is that a socially constructed thing?
Well, no, I think that would be commenting on biology.
Yes. So when I talk to you about an internal identity of gender, is that just a socially constructed thing?
Yeah, I do believe gender is a social construct.
Your internal experience of gender?
No, not. I think that gender is socially constructed, and then people can have different experiences based on how their brains work. Obviously,
so we've just happened to socially construct gender more or less the same way for 10,000 years of human civilization?
I think that there are... I'm not saying that gender isn't influenced by sex. I think that there are biological things that influence the way gender is socially constructed.
Okay.
Destiny's really into feet. Thank you. Good to know.
Now you're basically trying to agree with me in more words and trying to make something up. Now you're agreeing with me. Now you're saying there's biologically, so there is an underlying fact of the matter. It's not just a socially constructed thing, right?
No, I'm not saying there's a fact of the matter. I'm saying that sex influences the social construct of gender.
Sure. Do you know what a bench press is? Like an exercise?
Like lifting weights?
Yeah, that's like a socially constructed exercise, right?
Uh-huh.
But I need 2 arms to do it. So like male or female we can say these are socially constructed genders, but there still might be an underlying fact of the matter that is like both necessary and sufficient to have these things expressed, right? Just calling it a social construct doesn't mean nothing, or it can be anything.
The social construct stems from, like, it arose out of biology, but that doesn't mean that we have to stay strict to that.
Also doesn't mean that we have to just change it if we don't have, like, this is the thing, right? Here's the problem, because I think that this is I think Ryan's perspective on transness is very choice driven, and it's not. I think that, to me, no offense, if his position is basically like, we have social constructs were created based off of like biological aspects, right? Like socially, we said that like, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like historically, like, oh, women can't fight wars because they're weaker socially. And then as time went on and we had technology where it's like, okay, what does it really matter that somebody's a man or a woman when it comes to like doing jobs like a fucking bus driver? We would change our social constructs to be more inclusive of women, because obviously, you know, we would learn to respect women more. Things of that nature, right? But there's still a foundation. It's like, okay, so why change something for no reason. Like, hey, why should we give women rights? Well, women deserve like an equal chance, of course. This is a very regressive ideology. I probably could have used a better central, like a better focal point for this thing. But the idea is that like people, is that social constructs are rooted in like some kind of like objectivity, and then they shift based on like society's needs and I guess it is subjectivity. Basically, what's being said here is why Destiny's question here is why change your identity if it means nothing to you. If your whole argument is everything is socially constructed and it doesn't matter and there's no internal feeling and everything is socialized, and we can socialize somebody out of that particular behavior. If you could socialize somebody to be trans, then you could just if all trans people are socialized to be trans, then all trans people can socialize out of being trans, which is just not true. So it feels like if Ryan doesn't grasp that, then he may have a pretty shallow view of like what non-binary is. I'm not saying these words correctly. You get what I'm saying, though.
Sure, but we can't just change our gender identity on a whim, right? If I were to tell you to just be a girl, can you just do that?
Well, there are people who are gender fluid.
If I were to tell you to just like have the internal gender identity of being a woman, do you think you could do that in like a few months or a couple years?
No, I don't think I could force myself to be a girl.
Why
I
not?
think it's something that I experience and then, express outwardly. I don't think you can force someone into a gender.
Where does that experience come from?
Forcing them, but like, could you socialize someone into it if it's a social construct?
They do it in prison. Hey, they do it in prison. If you know what I'm saying, socialize them into girls all the time, brother. That's sad shit. Very sad stuff. That would be an instance of a very traumatic experience, though.
Could you socialize someone? Like, I don't think that you could. I don't think that that's how it works. That you.
Well, then what do you mean when you say it's a social construct then?
I think socially we gain more acceptance for trans issues, and then people can get to the point where they say, "Oh, that that identity fits me, that label fits me." That
yeah, but where does the identity or label come from? Does it come from? Is it some biological like underlying fact of the matter, or is it just like an identity that we craft for ourselves?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think gender originally stemmed from biology, but I think it's something.
So if gender stems from biology, then it's not a far cry to say that like there's like a brain thing, since I imagine this is where our gender is probably coming from, there's like a brain thing that's controlling some part of our internal gender identity.
Sure. Yeah, I think that it's definitely psychological things going on other than just sociological. I think it's probably both.
To some extent, sure. But okay, so we've gotten to my position now. That's good, I guess. What else?
Fuck, I didn't mean to do that.
I don't know.
Or is there anything else, or?
No, I guess not.
Damn, brother.
I don't think we've gotten to your position. I still do believe that gender is socially constructed. It's just
no, but it's an underlying fact. There's an underlying fact of the matter.
Destiny believes that too. It's just like, again, there's usually a foundation for social contracts.
There's an underlying biological fact of the matter that's not socially constructed, right? Like me being able to do a socially constructed exercise, the bench press, comes down to whether I have 2 arms. My arms are not socially constructed.
If you're saying that gender, because it originally stemmed from biology, that means that to be a man, you have to have a penis. No, I don't agree with that.
Wait,
what the fuck is saying
what?
That? What?
Well, I did.
Hold on, wait, my shit is lagging. Hold on, really hard. Who's the third person in here that you're talking to?
Well, I thought that's the argument you were making with that, like, you have to have arms to do a bench press. I thought,
bro, there's no Ryan, brother. I love you to death, my man. That was rough. That was rough. That was really bad. That was probably the worst thing I've heard in this conversation, or one of them from Ryan, and I'm not trying to be a fucking asshole. But the fact that he's not grasping this concept that social constructs are rooted in some kind of like objective truth or some kind of a reality, and that there needs to be a foundation. He's not saying that you need a penis to be a woman. He's saying that like in order to identify as a woman, if you are like a biological male, for lack of a better term, a born male at birth, or signed, whatever, there needs to be a logical or like a foundation for why you're feeling that particular experience. It's like, what is it? Oh, well, I have my brain chemistry's off or something. That's all he's saying. He's not saying that you have to have a penis. That's really rough, because I feel like I don't know how you didn't understand that concept. I felt like, I don't know if that's rough, man. I don't know. That was a rough one for me. Like that's a rough interpretation to me, and I don't know. It just feels, I don't know, bro. That was just a little. That was just rough to me.
Hold on. I have never made the argument that you need a penis to be a man. The entire time I'm talking about your brain.
Okay, I thought that's what you were implying by you have arms to do a bench press. Okay, I'm sorry, I misinterpreted that.
Okay, no, the arms for this case are whatever part of your brain gives you like an internal expression of gender.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything that we do socially is influenced by what's happening inside of our brains. I thought you were saying more of a biological as far as...
No, Ryan Beard took. He already admitted that he lost. I do wonder what that means to him. What does it mean to him that he lost this conversation? Like, I wonder what part he does feel. I wonder if it's like the JonTron defense where it's like, I feel like I lost the debate because I couldn't express myself well. You know what I mean? I wonder what it is rather than like, oh, I lost the debate because I just don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I wonder which position he would take. Like if he was pressed on it, like what does it mean to him that he had lost this conversation? Because I do think that a lot of people what happens is they'll have a conversation with Destiny. And this can happen with some people, but they'll have a conversation with Destiny and then they'll say, well, I'm not good at debating. Like Hassan, perfect argument. I'm not good at debating. And so like that's why I lost. But the thing is that like, yeah, that can definitely be true. Like maybe you go into a conversation not being as educated or not being as good at debating, but Destiny, this doesn't read as a debate at all to me. This reads as like a conversation about things. That's it. It reads as a conversation about things. So I wonder what Ryan Beard's perspective, Mr. my brother, Mr. Beard, I wonder what his perspective would be on that.
Penises and stuff. Like more of like the chromosomes and having a penis or whatever. But yeah, no, I agree that anything that's a social construct is obviously influenced by what's happening psychologically.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Okay. I'm a little insulted that, but this is more common online. You said that I wouldn't be a good advocate for trans positions. I don't think you know anything about trans people or the trans anything. I super think you have no idea. I think you've like seen some tweets and you identify with it because it's woke and you get like points for it online. But I truly think you have no.
I'm just gonna say like listen. Based on this conversation, I think it's very clear that Destiny has a much deeper understanding of trans people than most other people. I also do think that like there may be some aspects that Ryan's not super educated on, and I think that's fair. But I don't think that he's doing it for like lefty liberal talking points. I do think that like Ryan genuinely does care. You know, I don't think that everybody needs to be super educated on the depths of a particular thing to know that it's like okay. I think that most people could get by being trans affirming, understanding a very simple concept that trans people are people going through shit, and then that shit is generally valid for most people who identify as trans. You know, there's obviously going to be outliers that are doing it to be disingenuous, but trans people are just people going through a thing. And like, you know, give them some respect and some room to like fucking live and live their best life. That's where I would come from. I don't think you have to have a super, you know, anything beyond that. However, Destiny making these assertions does make sense because it does seem like Mr. Beard, he did come in saying you're transphobic and made it like a really dishonest sweeping generalization. So
no fucking idea about anything related to trans people or trans experience. I'm a little insulted that you said that I would be a bad advocate for it, but I understand why. Because I guess to you, like advocating for trans people means talking about like cool neo pronouns and like dear people. That's like the cool thing about trans people.
What is that, beer people?
Yeah, I never said anything about
neo pronoun. You mentioned it. It was one of your things.
I mentioned neo pronouns, yeah, but I don't think that's like
neo pronouns have nothing to do with being trans. It's not at all related.
It has something to do with the social construction of being trans.
No, it has to do with the social construction of getting likes on Twitter and being an attention whore. That's what neo-pronouns are about. Nobody in the history of all of mankind was born with a set of pronouns in their brain that they need to be called. It's a fake thing that some people online made up because they're not getting enough attention. That's all it is. Like
that's like saying the English language is a fake thing that people made up because they want.
Well, so like, what would be the foundation for you needing to be called a deer? Like, I'm deer gender. Like, what's the foundation for that? Like, what's the incongruency going on in your brain? Maybe you're like legitimately fucking insane. I don't really know, but yeah, okay.
Wanted attention, like.
Do you think that we made up communication because people want attention, or do you think it's like a necessary precondition for cooperation and survival?
I think that for some people, neo-pronouns is necessary for the way that they communicate and express themselves.
Why? How?
I don't know. Ask them.
I do, and every answer is something that I would expect a subhuman to say.
Oh my god.
All right, well, she's saying you expect a subhuman person to have neo-pronouns. Sounds a little transphobic to me, but whatever.
Okay, well.
All right, we're not going to get anywhere.
Thanks a lot, buddy. Have fun.
Yeah.
Oh my god, bro. That fucking trolling at the end, bro. You could tell Destiny just did not care anymore. Jesus Christ. This motherfucker gets himself in trouble sometimes, bro. What the fuck? Oh my god. Yeah, man, that was a little bit of a rough conversation, I think. Listen, brother, let me tell you something. I don't think it's a bad thing to come into a conversation. Listen, I think it's a very toxic trait to come into a conversation with anybody about anything, like feeling like you can't be wrong sometimes about some things. You know, I think that Ryan had a general prescription that like he was somebody who was very educated on trans issues. And he wasn't right. And honestly, even myself after that, like, oh, that was like a really, like, there are things that like I was like, wow, that's incredible. Like listening to Destiny, like that's definitely a much, there's nothing wrong with somebody knowing more than you, brother. In fact, the people who know more than you usually become less successful because who can identify with the fucking weird 30-something-year-old cuck that knows about trans people? You know what I'm saying, bro? The real money is when you don't know fucking anything. All right? That's why Destiny's washed up. He's a has-been. And then this is the new wave. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But definitely a fucking interesting conversation. Oh, I wonder what Destiny says after though.
It makes me more mad. Now that I talked to him, now I'm more upset. Because I like, now I kind of wonder more. I feel like sometimes, I don't know, never mind, I'm not even saying anything. I don't think he knew anything about trans people at all. I think he actually was clueless.
Oh my god.
Will Smith clapped Chris Rock on stage.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's it, man. Yeah, listen, brother. That's rough. That's rough, man. That's all I really can say here. Is that was fucking brutal. I feel bad for Ryan. He got clapped pretty hard there. Yeah, man. Fucking taking that fat L. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and another special shout out to all my Patreon and Twitch subs. If you'd like to support this channel further than you already have by just watching the video alone, go down to the links below where you can sub on my Patreon, which will allow you to get your name on this beautiful black wall. Or you can go to the Twitch page and you can actually use a free Amazon Prime sub, if you have Amazon Prime, to subscribe. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.